Okay, this next part I call our true colors. It's having a look at the human body under different wavelengths of light. This girl was photographed under normal light, near infrared light, which is similar to TV remote controls, and far infrared, which is getting close to thermal. Thermal is the light you emit. This is still reflected light. So there'd be no taking this picture if the sun wasn't producing these colors in the first place. So what's interesting here, while she looks pretty much white under normal light, under infrared, she's black. Turns out, what makes a white person a black person is just that tiny little piece of the visible spectrum. Under infrared light, all humans are black. There's no difference. But interestingly, while her skin in visible light is light colored and it's dark under infrared light, under visible light, her hair is black, but under infrared, her hair is white. It's actually reflecting the colors that produce heat. So her head would actually be okay and not overheat despite the hair being black because it's turned to white into the deeper regions of red, which is where heat is. This is why her skin will still feel warm to the touch, right? So even a white person standing next to a black person, they may not be that much cooler because of the difference in skin color, because you're only seeing the visible skin color difference. Under ultraviolet light, white people do not come out very well at all. This is what this girl looks like in regular light, and you can see tiny, tiny little freckles there. But when we flash ultraviolet at her, this is what she looks like. Why has she got her eyes closed? UV is bad for you. You don't take UV pictures very often. Those of you who have done welding know that if you're arc welding, you have to wear a face shield, and if you stare at the welder while it's working without a face shield on, you will have a massive sunburn. So this is a really quick flash of UV. If you took like 40 pictures of the girl, you'd give her a nasty sunburn, but she closes her eyes to protect them. The black areas are areas of pigment you can't see that are blocking UV. Her body has permanently deposited them there because she's been in the sun too much. They don't necessarily mean they're going to turn to skin cancer. They can't look at this picture and say, oh, this little blobby here, you're going to have skin cancer there one day. But what it's showing is damage being done to the skin. The body has permanently discolored that skin in the UV. So a bumblebee, will you think you're afraid of bees? This girl does not look like this to a bee. She looks like that. They're more scared of us. This woman did not expose herself to as much sunlight, so the damage isn't visible too much yet in the UV. But notice she's got this tiny little like aging spot there. But in real, under the UV, look at the damage being done there. It's really quite profound. Regular light, you can still see the UV damage. This man was a trucker for almost 30 years. The left side of his face was at the open window. And this is the damage sunlight did in 28 years to his face. You might go, did he have his window down? Generally, a trucker would have his window down, but you'd get blasted on that side. The window glass itself is pretty darn good at blocking UV, because if it didn't, and the UV got through the vehicle, it would damage the seats, it would wreck the plastic on the dashboard. So car windows are pretty shielded, but a good portion of the year he'd have the window open, and the shielding isn't perfect. But basically, if you got the windows up in your car, you're not going to get a suntan. And if you have those auto-dimming glasses that turn to sunglasses, when you go in your car, you'll realize they only dim down a small amount because virtually no UV is getting into the cab. So this is damage due to the open window. Black people under UV, they shine again. You can see this woman's complexion is virtually perfect under ultraviolet, and she already came into this world completely shielded from it. This butterfly pattern on her face, I can't figure out if she's reflecting UV or it has something to do with her makeup. But yeah, black people still look okay under UV light, where white people look like zombies. This reflects in the skin cancer rates. These are the skin cancer rates for white people, and these are the skin cancer rates for people of color. The bottom one being black people. So white people get skin cancer 5 times the rate of black people. Unfortunately, the fastest growing skin cancer group right now are American Hispanics, because they somehow got under the impression, probably from social media, that their darker skin color meant they were immune to skin cancer, and they've had a drop off in Hispanic kids wearing sunscreen. So the US government's trying to point out, like, look, you have 5 times less chance of getting skin cancer than a white person, but if you deliberately go out and don't wear sunscreen and bake yourself in the sun, you could still make your skin cancer rate 10 times worse than it would have been naturally. So yes, even black people can benefit from sunscreen. The Earth, very frequently we take pictures through infrared, and we can actually cut right through the clouds and see detail at different elevations. So the microwave infrared is catching the high clouds, the near infrared goes right through to the ocean. So there's really neat stuff. If you go to this website here, Weather Office, that will show you a whole bunch of images you can look at on the weather radar. Now, what happens when the sunlight comes into the Earth? The sunlight comes in mostly in the visible spectrum here at 0.5 micrometers, and the Earth kicks it back mostly as heat. So the sunlight comes in this wavelength, but the Earth starts emitting a much longer wavelength, which this is why it's colder at altitude. The sun doesn't heat the air. The sun heats the ground, and the ground heats the air. Okay? So the air can be ice cold, and the ground underneath is scalding hot. On different planets, we can see this effect. The CO2 band here. The CO2 is swallowing up the infrared. So in planets that have lots of CO2 in their atmosphere, there's a huge cut down in the heat leaving the planet, right? CO2 can only block heat. It cannot block light. So the light gets through to the Earth, the heat tries to leave, and the heat is what CO2 blocks. I'd like you to watch the B Vision and sunscreen links. They're short, but they're really cool, and this will give you a lot of preliminary stuff for astronomy and into grade 10 and into grade 11 physics. Next, we'll do the hydrosphere.